Good morning, everyone. It is 8 o'clock in the morning for me as I'm recording this on a Monday morning. So, good morning to you all. Hope you all are making it through these hard times all right, keeping a good, healthy mental state. And at least we have World of Warcraft to rely on to distract us through these hard times. Anyways, I wanted to say that today we're going to be going over the Phase 4 Mage Best in Slot. Yes, I know I normally cover Warlock content as my primary content, but a lot of people have been asking me about my caster knowledge in general and mage questions going forward into the future, why we use some items, why we don't use other items, do we reach hit cap, do we want to drop hit pieces, and so on and so on. So that's what we're going to be covering today since mage is such a popular class. Anyways, let's get into the video. Before getting into the different best in slot sheets, I do want to point out that many of you probably already know this, but Blade of Eternal Darkness from Moradin will always be the best in slot AoE weapon for AoE damage, AoE farming, any sort of AoE scenario. The more enemies there are, the better this weapon is. But this weapon is extremely rare from Moradin off of Princess Theradress. So always keep in mind that this is technically always going to be the best in slot for AoE. However, not many people are going to have this weapon because it's so rare that it takes some people 500, 1,000, or even 2,000 kills to even see this weapon one time. So most of the player base doesn't actually have access to world boss loot. And in addition to that, there's a large portion of the player base and even people who comment on my videos that just don't have the time to get rank 10 or are simply not interested in grinding out rank 10. So the first setup that we're going to look at is going to be a setup that does not include PvP gear and also is not going to include any world boss loot. That way we can accommodate to the general populace and the normal average mage player that isn't in the 1%. Even though this setup doesn't have PvP gear or world boss gear, it is still an incredibly good setup, giving us the absolute spell hit cap that you can reach in Classic WoW. Technically in Classic WoW, spells have a 17% chance to miss against boss monsters. However, there's always going to be 1% chance to miss no matter how much hit rating you can accrue on your character. So the true spell hit cap that a player can actually reach in Classic WoW is 16%. And this setup has 10%, and in the Frost tree has a passive 6% hit rating for its fire and frost spells, giving this setup essentially complete hit cap. What's really adding a lot to our hit rating here are the Zul'Gurub Mage class enchants for both the helmet and the legs. The Mage enchant gives you 18 spell power and 1% hit, and you can have 2 of these. This adds up to having 36 spell power and 2% hit rating just off enchants alone, which is incredible. It's almost as good as having a Neltharian's Tear just off of enchants. Speaking of Neltharian's Tear, that is something else that I'd like to note about this specific list. Neltharian's Tear is actually best in slot for this list, but I wanted to show you guys how you can mix up pieces of gear since mages are able to reach hit cap in this phase. In this particular setup, we have 2 on-use trinkets, which would be used in a long duration fight. For example, using Arcane Power and popping Mind Quickening Gem, and then once Arcane Power and Mind Quickening Gem run out, you call for a PI and you pop Talisman of Imperial Power, and then you do significant amount of damage over that period of time. However, if you have a Tear of Neltharion is going to be a fantastic item to use. So let's look at what this setup would look like if we changed out one of these items for a Neltharian's Tear, if the mage was able to get his hands on one. If the mage was able to get a Neltharian's Tear, that's going to boost your hit rating up by 2%, which means we want to drop 2% hit rating in this setup in different slots. The first slot that we did was we dropped the Blood-Tinged Gloves from ZG, and instead used the Tier 2 gloves, Netherwind Gloves, for more spell power and critical strike rating. Secondly, we dropped one of the rings, Band of Force Concentration, over to Ring of Spell Power as a second copy since this ring is non-unique. Now, Band of Force Concentration is an incredible ring and has a lot of value for the ring slot at this phase of content. However, there's no other slot with hit rating that you can really subtract from. Taking any Bloodvine piece would automatically break the Bloodvine piece bonus. Using Cloak of Consumption is already the best cape by far that you could use. You could take this away for Cloak of the Broodlord, but I believe that keeping Cloak of Consumption in Ring of Spell Power is more beneficial. In Bracers of Arcane Accuracy, there's no other bracers that can really compare to these. The only other alternatives are basically just bracers that have flat 21 spell power, in which this is just straight up better. So as you can see, getting Neltharion's Tear can be a huge boost to your character, but can cause some gearing issues for mages since you get so much hit rating in this ZG patch. The next two setups we're going to look at are the best in slot setups that you can use for this phase of content. This is going to include both the rank 10 2-piece bonus and World Boss loot. And before we get into it, I would like to mention that, of course, the rank 14 dagger is going to be an excellent weapon of choice, being the best one-hander that you can get until next Rammus. However, we're not going to include rank 14 on this BIS list just because of the sheer population of players that have the rank 14 dagger. There's such a low amount of people that have the rank 14 dagger that I feel like it's not really necessary to mention, since it's not going to apply to 99.9% of the people watching this video. But if you are one of those people, yes, of course, the rank 14 dagger is a fantastic weapon to have, and you will be using it up until next Rammus. So, these two BIS lists are going to be the BIS lists for if you have rank 10 and if you do not have rank 10. And luckily, I'd like to say that for this phase of content, both the rank 10 and the non-rank 10 setup are almost identical in damage output. So having rank 10 for this phase of content on your mage, if you're completely full best in slot, is not going to make that big of a difference, if any difference at all. However, this does not mean that you shouldn't get rank 10. Rank 10 is still going to be used as its 2-piece bonus going forward into AQ40, and you'll replace it and stop using the rank 10 2-piece bonus in Nax Rammus. However, it is still going to be beneficial to have in AQ40, and if you already have rank 10 2-piece bonus, that means you don't need to receive the other items that can compensate for the rank 10 2-piece bonus, which means you're saving loot for other players in your raid, increasing the overall performance of your raid by diversifying what loot drops that your guild gets. So looking at this BIS list here, we're going to utilize the rank 10 shoulders along with the rank 10 gloves. The reason why we can't use any of the other rank 10 pieces is Mission Dare from Neltharion is just far too good and is not a slot that you can afford to drop profitably. Other than that, any other piece that you would put on your character would break your Bloodvine set bonus, and that is also something that you cannot afford to do profitably. And the other item that has changed is a fantastic ring from World Bosses, specifically the Emerald Dragon Terrar. That is one of the 4 Emerald Dragons coming in Phase 4. This is going to be a great ring upgrade for any mage. And I would like to mention that Band of Force Concentration off of Ebon Rock is also an incredible ring for this phase of content, giving you a ton of stats compared to other rings. However, I'd like to point out that this gear setup is also already at hit cap while with utilizing Neltharion's Tear. If you already have this gear setup and you have a Neltharion's Tear, then you do not need to use a Band of Force Concentration, even though the raw stats on it are good. If you do not have a Neltharion's Tear, and your guild is prioritizing them more to the Warlocks, then you can go for Band of Force Concentration, if that isn't already Warlock prio as well. And this last setup is going to be the best in slot setup, not including rank 10. And since you're not including rank 10, all you're going to do is, instead of the shoulder and glove slot being rank 10, you use Mantle of the Blackwing Cabal and Netherwind gloves. This setup is going to give you approximately the same amount of stats when compared to the rank 10 setup. Alright, well that's the end of this video, guys. I actually need to get back in Moradin on my alt mage and get back to farming that dagger. Thank you so much for watching the video, guys. I'll see you next time.